Welcome back to Math 125G.
Well, you guys know what time it is.
But in case you have any feedback on like technological aspects too, we absolutely welcome that. How that's been. I guess by now, some of you have, um, submitted assignments, whether it was discussion work, or so. We'll always start class with a few announcements. Uh, 11 p.m. Pacific. You can use Gradescope. It seems like many of you have, so
Pose
hopefully
for
it's
the
been a smooth
thumbnail.
process so far. I will have an
No, I
office
gotta
hour
be
today
tired.
after class. It will show you my office hours for the week, and it will give you a link you can use. We'll try to use that link actually for Zoom meetings as well, individual meetings. Often we'll just decide to meet in that office hours room. Um, so this will be from 2 to 3 p.m. So maybe just starting just a few minutes after class ends. And the way it will work, so uh,
Aw.
if I don't hear that you're coming, I may not be directly connected to the Zoom session. So uh, please do email me ideally in advance. It doesn't need to be in advance. If it is office hour period and you decide you didn't know in advance, but you decide you'd like to come, you're welcome to email me and say, I am planning to come to office hour. I'll be on in a few minutes. Please do. If you do email me during the office hour, please allow a few minutes in case I don't see the email in time. So I might take a little bit more delay. If you let me know in advance, we can plan. If you let me know, I'll be in your office hour around 2:30. I'll make sure I'm connected then. At any rate, I'll be available during that time for questions and really happy to help and talk with all of you. So I welcome you to come. Please do come. Uh,
This
to let
game's
me
so
know
relaxing.
if and when
Dang it.
you'll be dropping by.
I wasn't paying attention.
Professor, is it okay if I interrupt real quick?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Are office hours going to be like at the same time every week?
That's a very good question. So typically, eventually, yes. Let me say it this way: the first couple of weeks of class, there's always some flux because of scheduled meetings and beginning of semester things, and so everyone's schedules are kind of evolving a bit. So right now, the office hours I have for this week are for this week's office hours,
That was
and
sick.
probably that'll be the same way for next week. But I'm hoping by week 3 we should be regular. So it might even be by week 2. I'm not exactly sure yet.
Okay, thank you. I just asked that because I have a class that follows right after this one, so I'm unable to.
Okay, I understand. There'll be today. So this week we'll have two office hours, and this week there'll be 2 to 3 p.m. And there'll be another office hour Friday, 5 to 6 p.m. I'm aiming, we'll modify times, and sometimes if we can't find an office hour that works, sometimes there are office hours that just don't work, for a given student schedule. Then I'm happy to meet at another time. So just we'll take it, as
Awesome,
we go.
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Okay, so we're at a few more announcements. One, I want to make one general point that I didn't make last class about the syllabus and about expectations.
Oh, he
just so
coming,
you're
coming.
aware. So a general addition to each homework. I'm not exactly sure whether the homework 1.1 PDF said this. So there were problems in section 1.1.
This is
aside,
not peaceful.
But the homework before doing the problems is to read the
Bro,
section.
this man is coming after me.
As we go, I'd recommend even further, once you know what section we're going to do on, which lecture, we'll have some sort of rough lecture plan that we'll be looking ahead, starting later this week. And ideally, if you could read it before lecture, it might even help you with lecture. Roughly, so a plan is forthcoming, but the plan is roughly one section a day. So last time we talked about 1.1. Well, we didn't quite finish 1.1. We'll try to wrap up today, and today we'll talk about 1.2. And ideally, we'll go roughly at that rate. We will slow down at times, just depending. Um, I just want to, let you know that we may not. I just want to give you a heads up that we may not describe everything in lecture. In lecture, that's necessary for homework or the exams.
What does that mean?
So, what's the point of lecture? The point of lecture is sort of to highlight the big picture ideas, right? So lecture is really more about understanding. It's not meant to be a replacement for the textbook, but it's meant to, in some ways, be a guide or give you the key ideas that you need to go and review the textbook and go through it.
So why am I
just
here?
want to let you know that in advance that you should plan to know what's in each section for exams and so on. So just,
I could be doing
of course,
literally anything
I'll
else right now.
review all this whenever we talk about exams.
But it's all right. We're here for the content today.
Okay. Any questions about all of that? So we'll jump in now. So at the end of last time, we started talking about functions. And we started talking about how we describe functions. Okay, so we'll be interested in functions and how to describe them. And typically we'll be interested in functions of the form which have a numerical flavor to them. So functions are just some rule of turning some
A
input into some
numerical
output.
flavor to them.
There are more functions than just functions of numbers.
Never heard anyone say that
There's
before.
a function which you give me a car and I tell you which color the car is. That's a function, but that's not the sort of function we'll be interested in here. We'll be interested in functions of the form. You give it a numerical input. You give this function a numerical input, a real number, and it produces a real number out. And we want to develop some language for working with them and for describing them and visualizing them. Okay, so a function, remember, is some rule, which given a real number produces a unique real number out. Now, it's not the case that all the functions we'll consider take any real number possible. Okay, so sometimes a function may not be defined on all real numbers, so maybe the function will only have some allowable real numbers that you can put in, and maybe the function won't give you all possible real numbers out.
That was so smooth.
So for instance, f of x equals x squared only returns non-negative numbers, right? So x squared is always greater than 0, so it only produces some types of outputs. And f of x equals the square root of x is only defined for x non-negative. Okay, so f of x equals square root of x doesn't take all possible inputs as real, all possible real number inputs. Okay, so that's why the sum is there, and that's pretty important. But I'm just going to sweep it under the rug for the purpose of storytelling. Just want to let you know that it's there. And as we talked about last time, we can describe functions.
Why is he coming after me again? What did I do?
In a variety of ways. At a high level, if we're interested in, some function that is about the behavior of, something we're trying to model, something we're trying to understand, we might try to give a verbal description of this function. This is the function that, given a position, a GPS coordinate on the Earth, returns the temperature, on January 22nd, 2020 at 3 p.m. So there's a precise temperature at that time in a given location. That's a function. Okay, we can describe functions visually, numerically, via some table of values, and algebraically.
Why is he so speedy?
So today, we talked about all four of these. I want to focus on visually and algebraically today.
Visually and algebraically.
And kind of clarify what I mean and give examples of certain functions that we do study these ways. So as we saw last time, we can graph functions, and this is what I mean by visually. We can plot, given the various numerical inputs, what are the outputs. We can graph, or sometimes we're in a situation where the function is so concrete there's an algebraic formula that describes
That's big points.
what's happening. Okay, so there are various things given such representations. So we'll study some examples, but the various things where we'd like to, from such a representation, understand properties of the function. Okay, so types of things.
Oof. That was dumb. Shouldn't have gone for that backflip.
Of properties. We'd like to understand about a given function.
Why does he always pause when I start
When
talking?
I say we'd like to understand, I mean given some
Makes me
way of
think he
thinking
can
about the
hear me.
function. So given a graph or formula, we might be interested in extracting out some information. So for instance, what is the domain? Or range? And by this I mean typically, unless otherwise specified, this means the maximal collection of real numbers on which the function is defined. Okay. So for instance, as we saw, f of x equals square root of x is only defined for x greater than or equal to 0. So the domain is the set of
We hit
non-negative
those.
real numbers.
Double backflip. That was sick.
Okay. There are various ways symbolically for talking about non-negative real numbers, okay, that I want to remind you about. So so numerically, we might represent this by an interval. The closed interval from 0 to open interval infinity, right? Infinity is sort of just means we're looking at everything, anything arbitrarily large that's greater than or equal to 0. Or sometimes you indicate the collection of non-negative numbers by using these sort of curly brace notation, the set of x such that x is greater than or equal to 0, or if you're being really precise, might as well have this really precise language in there because it helps us later. This is the set of what x? The set of real numbers x. So the set of x in the real numbers, I will give you a precise translation of what I'm writing, so it doesn't seem like, total strange symbols. Okay, so we can talk about a set in words, intervals, using set language. Okay, so this is so this curly braces means the set of. This little e means in. This r with a double bar is often our terminology for real numbers, all real numbers. This bar literally in English means such that. Okay, so this is a very it seems very elaborate, but if you think about it, if you
Ugh,
if you try to
choked.
talk about other sets, sometimes this is a very convenient language. It's a very condensed way of talking about um, a certain domain. So, putting it all together, um, this means the set of um, numbers that are real, x that are in the real numbers, such that x is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, this is the set of non-negative real numbers. Okay, that's maybe a, a, a digression, but it does come
I was
up here
looking at
and
the Zoom
there,
chat.
and I think it's useful to just see this language.
Someone's asking
We'll
a
try
dumb
not to use it too
question.
much, but it's often helpful. Okay, so we might want to know the domain. What else? What might we want to know? So,
There's a question in the chat.
oh, thank you. The question says, 1 second. Yes, so you can say the domain. So here you can say the domain is of f. So the question was, can we say the domain of f is 0 infinity? And indeed, you could say that this set is D, but D, I would say it's even more clear if you say the domain of f, because when you write capital D, you know, that's when you give an answer, it's not clear what f was, right? So it, for it to sort of be readable on its own without looking at the question, I might say the domain of f is this. But if the question's right there, then you could say, the domain is. Yeah, one of the things that's takes some practice is writing answers that are really clear and readable. So one thing I encourage you all to do is there's some advice in the homework about that, but I encourage you all when you're writing your homework to apply the following test, which is that if if one of my fellow students or instructors were to read the solution, with even without
Oh, he
knowing the
flew.
problem statement, but let's say they knew the problem statement, they were to read my solution, could they follow all the steps I took to get the answer? That's
I'm gonna stop there for
one
now.
of the rules we'll use for how we
Thanks
assign
for
credit.
watching.